You want to see Tom Homan call Letitia James dumber than a box of rocks? Yeah, me too. That's at the end of the video. Welcome to the Doug TenNapel channel. This is where the happy patriots are. Joy Reid had Letitia James on her show. Put those two minds together and you still only have half a mind.
So, General James, I want to ask you about an additional lawsuit that New York has joined, and this is suing the Trump administration over their attempt to negate birthright citizenship. We, of course, know that's a constitutional amendment. They can't simply end it, but please describe that lawsuit.
So a lawsuit was filed, again, joining with others in New Jersey. It was filed in Massachusetts, and another case was filed in the great state of Washington. And it basically confirms something which has been an amendment for over 150 years following the Civil War.
Now, hold on. We got to get a little clarity on this 14th Amendment frabba-jabba. It goes all the way back. The debate over birthright citizenship, it centers around the interpretation of the 14th Amendment. And it reads, quote, all persons born or naturalized in the federal states and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Now, it really is that little tiny clause that gives us the wiggle room. It's subject to the jurisdiction thereof. So there's question now, who has the jurisdiction to decide? That's written in the amendment. So here's the big theory on the jurisdiction clause interpretation. Some argue the phrase subject to the jurisdiction thereof was intended to exclude children born to foreign diplomats or Native Americans under tribal jurisdiction at the time, as these groups were not fully under U.S. jurisdiction. Proponents of this view argue that this case should also exclude children of undocumented immigrants, since their parents have not fully submitted to the U.S. jurisdiction due to their immigration status. So they're going to bring up a whole lot of other frabba-jabba, but that's where the rub is going to be. This could go all the way to the Supreme Court because it's never been decided, and it probably needs to be decided.
And in response to the awful Dred Scott decision, and it was confirmed by two United States Supreme Courts. And it basically states the following, that any individual born in these United States should be afforded birthright citizenry. And it's something that has not been undermined for over 150 years until now. Someone who just doesn't understand the contours of the Constitution, and someone who doesn't understand that with the stroke of a pen, he thinks that he could somehow undermine the Constitution of these United States. And so it's critically important that, as the judge said in the great state of Washington, that this was blatantly illegal and on its face unconstitutional, and that a member of the Bar Association should not have, he questioned how a member of the Bar Association could possibly argue that an executive order would undermine a constitutional amendment.
I mean, they are the party that believes the Constitution is a living, breathing document. So suddenly it's not all, oh, whatever, we have to evolve it with the times. It's not going to work because I believe the language is so vague. It needs to go to the Supreme Court. It's entirely possible Trump could get reversed on this one and say, nope, we decided 14th Amendment counts. If you're an illegal and you plop a baby through the fence and it lands on U.S. territory, there's a U.S. citizen. I really doubt that's what the Constitution meant. Point being, Letitia James is doing her lawsuit, probably necessary, and Trump is going to push this thing through. It's not based on ignorance of the Constitution. Everyone knows what the Constitution says. Hasn't been argued. And
I totally agree with the judge. And in the case where we are awaiting a decision in Massachusetts, we are confident that we will get a preliminary injunction in joining the executive order of this president and his administration, which is basically illegal.
Right. And also quite ironic, again, there are many ironies here. I mean, 4 of Donald Trump's 5 children, their mothers were immigrants, right? His first 3 children's mother was an immigrant, and I'm not sure she was a citizen at the time they were born. And, Melania Trump obviously was an immigrant, not sure if she had her citizenship at the time his youngest son was born. And I'm not sure if they are undermining the question of citizenship based on your parents' lineage, how that doesn't apply close to home. You don't have to comment on that if you don't want to, but I just find it ironic. Let me ask you one final question.
Can I just say that there are,
please?
Can I just say that there are two attorneys general who benefit from birthright citizenry: A.G. Tong from Connecticut and A.G. Kwame Raoul from Illinois. And they proudly talk about all of the benefits that they've inherited as a result of being born in these United States, and they're proud of it.
Trump, I don't care if his kids were illegally born or grandkids were. It literally does not affect this. It does not matter at all. Same thing with what Letitia said at the very end there, that there are illegal immigrants that have received amazing benefits for coming here. No duh. That's why they're here. That's why their parents squatted and had them anchor baby here. Because of course you get the benefits. That's without question. Of course America is the greatest country in the world. And if you're black or Hispanic, this is probably news to Democrats, but you won the lottery if you were born here. Because this is not a racist country full of endemic racism, systemic racism that gives you such a disadvantage. People are fleeing their third world hellholes around the world to come here as a huge compliment of how wonderful our opportunities are. I am not an illegal citizen, but I feel like I won the lottery being a guy just born here. I didn't stand in line and say, I want to be born in America. I get the benefits. Thank you, Letitia James. We'll take that as a win.
And it's the status quo. It is the law of the land. But unfortunately, the president of these United States is not familiar with the Constitution.
Last question to you, and this is to go back to the attempt to freeze federal funds coming to the state of New York. And I'm just going to put on the screen, Medicaid accounts for $58 billion that comes back to New York, Health and Human Services, $22 billion, education, $4.7, transportation, $2.9, public protection, $2.4, and all of their funding, $800 million. Federal Medicaid dollars support health care for nearly 7 million New Yorkers, and these federal funds comprise about 36% of New York state budget. But I will note that New York is one of those donor states, a blue state that actually pays more into the federal government than the state gets back.
Good. Thanks for your contribution, because you also pay into America's crime rate more than most states do. More crime, more violence. So yeah, you pay a little more money. And by the way, the Medicaid payments, Caroline Levitt just clarified today that those Medicaid and Medicare payments are not things that Trump is freezing. Those are all going through just fine. But we're going to get back to this freeze up of dough.
I wonder, is there any way that you can even sort of fathom in your mind how Donald Trump could believe that the federal government could deny a significant donor state the money that it is entitled to by Congress?
No, I can't fathom. It's unfathomable. And it's just, it's shocking. And it's reckless. And what's even worse, Joy, is the fact that he would deny federal funding to California at a time when it is experiencing, these fires, this tragedy, and that he would condition it. And so it's also impacting the state of California.
Well, California is experiencing those fires exactly because the money they've had was not conditioned. She's going like, how dare he condition it when they're in this emergency? They're in the emergency, not from a lack of funding. No one has more funding than California. It may not come from the federal government, but just from their own tax base, from their own riches. This is one of the richest states in the country, therefore one of the richest states in the world, okay? Plenty of money, and they run a debt, squander their money, and that's exactly why it would be totally a mockery of all the other American citizens that pay our taxes and pay into a federal emergency budget for him to just hand over California. It's like giving a drug addict a winning lottery ticket, giving him $100 billion. What do you think would happen if you did that to a drug addict? Well, California is run by drug addicts. Perhaps literally.
The state of Michigan, they too, their Medicaid funds, their Medicaid portal was shut off. States all across this nation, their funds were disrupted. And here in the state of New York, we are a donor state. Again, a significant number of the population relies upon these federal funds, direct and indirect funds. And again, the President of the United States does not have power of the purse. That is up to the Congress, and he cannot undermine Congress with the stroke of a pen.
Okay, I'm going to push back on her a little bit there too. How much say does a president have on what Congress passes? I agree that Congress is the purse, but Congress, it doesn't mean that the money is not misspent by the states, redirecting it into DEI, very similar to California. They could be illegally squandering government money that passed in a law, and they're redistributing it. Here's an example. This is on the Executive Authority and Interpretation Comprehensive Review for Policy Alignment. One argument centers on the idea that the president has the authority and responsibility to ensure that federal spending aligns with the administration's policy objectives. Trump's administration might argue that the freeze was necessary to review and realign federal grants and loans with his executive orders, which aim to undo certain progressive policies like diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI initiatives, which could have been launched on illegally redistributing money away from how it was originally passed by Congress. Environmental policies, definitely true. And others perceived as not in line with the agenda. This is framed as an exercise of executive oversight to ensure the efficient and lawful use of taxpayer funds. So it could still be legal. And then there's other questions about this, that the president might have presidential impounding powers, which was based on a case called the Impounding Control Act of 1974, where they're saying there might be a place for the executive. Again, this might have to be argued in the Supreme Court. Fine with that. Now let's have Tom Homan call these ladies dumb as a box of rocks.
As I've said, performative. I mean, I want to show you an image of Kristi Noem, who was just confirmed, the former governor who was confirmed as Department of Homeland Security. I mean, it's as she's cosplaying. It's almost a game where she seems to be cosplaying, because I'm not sure what she thinks that she's portraying here. She might as well be at Comic-Con.
Now you're talking my language as a barely literate comic book artist. I went to Comic-Con 30 years in a row, had tables set up and sold books. And it's true. People dressed up. They're claiming that she's just doing a performance art here. What about how Rachel Levine dressed up in the Biden administration? What about the other military guy that dressed up like a dog? Talk about cosplaying, literally Comic-Con. What about the bald woman with the mustache and the red dress that was stealing all the luggage? Is that cosplaying? What about Karine Jean-Pierre dressing up and pretending to be a press secretary for 4 years?
James and Joy say you're reckless and you're just role-playing for fun.
She's dumber than a box of rocks. Bottom line is, let's talk about Chicago for a minute. Chicago mayor says that we put fear in the elementary schools because ICE agents went to elementary school. Total false story. What ICE did in Chicago is save children. What we did in New York today is save children. Just Chicago alone, we arrested like 9. We took them off the street. We took them off the street in New York today. We're protecting the community. We're saving children. We're going to secure that border so less Americans die of fentanyl deaths. We're securing the border so less terrorists and people on the terrorist watch list get into the country. Biden, under Biden, we had a 3,500% increase in people on the terrorist watch list. No, we're saving this nation. We're making America safe again. So they need to get out of the way because we're coming. We're going to do it. They're not going to stop us.
You know who is cosplaying is Biden was cosplaying as president, if anything. Joy Reid and Letitia James are indeed dumb as a box of rocks, as evidenced in their attack of Homan and Kristi Noem's very serious work on the streets of New York, on the streets of Chicago, down on the southern border. They are saving children's lives. They really are in danger because cartels will want to take them out. So her wearing armor is totally appropriate. Does anchor baby citizenship, does that get overturned, that 14th Amendment? Or does Trump have to pay out to DEI programs and Green New Deal stuff? Even if it's not enumerated by Congress? I'm Doug in exile.